I've got an albatross around my neck, and it's got the face of Michael Sheen.
What you really need is a big fat mortgage like an albatross around your neck.
Yeah. It's just an albatross around your neck, really. But you just can't see that yet. Just let her off this once.
He begged to be let off.
Letting her off.
Uncle Bill let you off this time with a warning.
So you obviously don't adhere to the no magic rule in here.
Well, my client has adhered to the law. Every law, every statute from the town.
And believe that teenagers should adhere to the rules of propriety.
Of course, I could give you the new keys, which would mean you'd have to adhere to my rules.
There are a few rules we must adhere to.
Adhere to strict rules to ensure things don't get...
And you will adhere to that rule, understand?
You must honorably adhere to the rules.
But if you fail to strictly adhere to the rules of his program...
Failure to adhere to the rules will result in time in the reflection cabin.
You've got your own set of rules, and you think everyone's going to adhere to them, but they're not.
And it adheres to only one rule.
It doesn't adhere to traditional laws of physics.
That I am, and worse, much worse. But I do have ethics, rules to which I...
Similar circumstantial evidence, case was thrown out.
But if they do, we can get it thrown out.
So you still want to search for insurance fraud, use the warrant to get him on murder. That washes out, gets thrown out of court. Then what?
I'm going to tell you that if I allowed this evidence, it would only be thrown out in the appellate court.
It is. The judge should have thrown out the case.
But you don't know who he is. You don't bring me anything in that he's done that wouldn't be thrown out of court. No threats, no assault and battery, no motive.
It's one telephone call, and the whole case is thrown out of court.
I'm ready to put the guy away for 150 years. But it would have been thrown out in the appellate court, and that son of a bitch, he knows it. So
That's a joke, Bill. Get it thrown out in the pew.
Tomorrow, today's papers will all have been thrown out.
Where apparently you defended yourself and had the case thrown out by citing free property rights of horse and carriage from 1798. Joke. January 95 and...
Lowell had the case thrown out of court on a technicality.
He would get Prime Minister Salazar to personally intervene and have the case thrown out of court.
Maybe if you put up some kind of a fight, you could have gotten the case thrown out.
You know, the judge threw out my gun charge in Vegas.
In other news today, an Atlanta court threw out all charges against Richard Parker in the murder case that shocked the city earlier this year.
Then you throw out all this evidence that everyone's fought so hard to get.
Well, you said we could throw out all the other evidence. Well, you said we could throw out all the other evidence.
Even if we throw out the case, would you still want to marry the Winslow girl?
He's not even throwing out the convictions of people like Gladys, who pled guilty under duress.
Excuse me, going to throw his case out sooner rather than later.
The judge will throw this whole case out.
throw this case out of court. It's dumb. Figure out a way to throw this case, or...
I need you to throw the case out. I need you to throw the case out.
Throwing my case out.
Throwing the case out. Case dismissed.
I am throwing this case out. I am throwing this case out. I should have done it hours ago.
The initial proposal for the law were thrown out at the committee stage.
The initial proposal for the law were thrown out at the committee stage.
The initial proposal for the law were thrown out at the committee stage.
The initial proposal for the law were thrown out at the committee stage. The initial proposal for the law were thrown out at the committee stage.
The initial proposal for the law were thrown out at the committee stage. The initial proposal for the law were thrown out at the committee stage.
The initial proposal for the law were thrown out at the committee stage.
The initial proposal for the law were thrown out at the committee stage. The initial proposal for the law were thrown out at the committee stage.
The initial proposal for the law were thrown out at the committee stage. The initial proposal for the law were thrown out at the committee stage.
The initial proposal for the law were thrown out at the committee stage. The initial proposal for the law were thrown out at the committee stage.
So whatever applications your system may provide for, you will always remain entirely anonymous.
Finally caught up with Patricia Hearst.
He was chasing him down the block when I caught up with him.
Tilly, it seems fate has caught up with me at last.
We caught up with him as he prepared for this highly anticipated return to racing.
But I'm afraid it's caught up with us.
The funny thing about it is, they still never caught up with those hijackers.
After all these years, you finally caught up with me.
I caught up with him a few days later, and he seemed different.
So you caught up with me, dude?
I'm right on your ass.
Yeah.
Caught up with him eventually.
You tried to hide you where she wouldn't find you, and by the time we caught up with him, he was dead.
We caught up with the boy's mother, Sarah Quinn of Bethany, shortly after her son's release from the hospital.
The police caught up with him in New Mexico.
And we caught up with Governor Becker as he attended a talk and book signing for football superstar Tony Blanchard at the Pine Valley Mall.
And when the federal police finally caught up with us, Trax pled guilty. Prime suspect, he turned Crown witness against me.
Suddenly, some of the regular Marseille sailors caught up with me and beat me up pretty badly.
I caught up with Mrs. Wolfe in the ladies' room at Victoria Station.
Then they caught up with him down at the dark room of the school.
We caught up with Perky Piper Grayson at her struggling Las Vegas casino where she was as incessantly upbeat as ever.
And Ms. St. John also came up back home when we caught up with the governor heading for a performance of the Good Shepherd Youth Choir run by Lexington police officers.
All this hiking has caught up with him.
Yeah, so don't get too caught up with that stuff. 'Cause it's a lie.
We caught up with him, took him to General Crook's headquarters.
We caught up with Chase and his entourage on the set of his directorial debut, Hyde.
Who's he calling an entourage?
Yes, I've been so caught up with work, I have no idea what's going on around here.
Now, what if you'd caught up with him?
We caught up with her in Hong Kong.
We caught up with him at Fort Wilderness.
Let me guess. His parole officers caught up with him.